Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Ramola D Reports. I'm Ramola D, and I'm here this afternoon with someone who's very interesting and who's doing great and important and very exciting work in the world today. And his name is Mark Keyshawn Christopher. He's a chief federal postal judge and plenipotentiary judge, and he's also an educator, somebody who is disseminating very important information on YouTube to people, I guess in a private way, but also in a public way to people because his videos are on YouTube. But I will, clarify these issues with him shortly. First of all, welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
Well, thank you very much for helping me and also getting the word out and also having this interview. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Mark. Honestly, I hardly know where to start because there is so much about what you are doing that is so very interesting. But I think a lot of it has to do with the language that you are striving to teach people. Now, did you want to speak a little bit about what this language is and what it exactly means? Because it has great implications, doesn't it, in terms of contracts, in terms of how we interact with each other as people, etc., and the kind of systems of law that we are all currently bound within.
Okay, so as an educator, that would be the position of my plenipotentiary. A plenipotentiary is a global educator. As a position of the chief federal judge, postal judge, I can judicate on anything. Perhaps the word judicate is not the correct word, but make rulings on anything that's on paper and come through the postal system, which would be virtually all types of communications. So where does that put me in the notches, as it were? We sit above all other courts. That includes the Supreme Court as well. How does that work? So this is the gist of it, which really is only a 30 seconds conversation, but people are so convoluted about language, this interview may well go on for hours. So I'll explain it very simply. If a letter comes through the letterbox, or is given to you, or is published, and it does not state what language it's written in, it comes under what is known as presumption and assumption. So you, I, the rest of the world, presume and assume that they are speaking in some sort of congruent language. And once they have read between the lines, as you would do with the book of Shakespeare, you have now accepted their words on that document that has no dictionary, no Styles manual to it, and does not even say what language it is written in. Once you have accepted it, you have contracted with that language under presumption and assumption. If somebody steps up and says, Mark, I have no idea what this letter is about, then I would step in. And they might say things like, we've written to them and saying, what language are you writing in? And they completely refuse to even state we're writing in plain, simple English. As a result, they have now failed to make their communications clear. Now, if you look up in your shelf, you will have many dictionaries. Each dictionary is a family, Oxford family, Cambridge family, fighting for the control of language in your world. So if you're writing from the Oxford dictionary, why don't you just tell me so and tell me which word you are taking those definitions from and just tell me what chapter and verse it is. After all, if I'm going to quote the Bible to you, as a professional, you would expect me to say chapter 1, verse 1, would you not? To qualify it and then say it's from King James Bible. So all that's happening is once people understand the nature of the language fraud, they are now cognizant that when they ask for a simple language performance, i.e., what language are you writing in? And when they don't get a response, you now have got yourself a fraud case. Because if you have not told me what language you're writing in as a professional government institution, you are committing fraud. In this country, that would be 2006 Fraud Act. In various other countries, it would be 2001 Fraud Act, which is the fraudulent conveyance of language. Now, if you go a little bit deeper, say, for example, the Bar Association uses frequently the Black's Law Dictionary. the Black's Law Dictionary definitions of a word would be vastly different from anything that you would see in Cambridge or Oxford or Webster's or anything like that. Okay, so if they fail to tell you we're writing from the Black's Law Dictionary and tell you what style it is from, which edition it is from, you are now in possession of a document that has failed to disclose its language. And because of that, I can now step in.
Now, isn't that the case with all documents really that are sent through the mail? They don't exactly, distinguish us and say we're using the Chicago Manual of Style or Black's Law Dictionary, whatever. They sort of, do you think there's some kind of presumption going on, or are they just kind of withholding information?
Well, if I ask you simple question like, what language you're speaking in, and you failed to give me an answer, how far do you think this interview will take place?
Not far. It will end pretty quickly, right? Yeah.
Okay, so are we speaking a congruent language? Yes or no?
Oh, are you asking me? Yes, we are communicating and making ourselves comprehensible to each other, I believe.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So the words that is coming out of my mouth mean exactly what I mean. So that means you're cognizant of what I'm saying. Would you agree?
Correct, yes.
Okay, but if you belong to a society called the Bar Association, and you pick those words out to mean what it does in the Black's Law Dictionary, and don't disclose that to me, you're just using words that sound like the everyday words that I use. And because it just sounds like those words that we usually use as congruent human beings going apart from one point to another, we walk ourselves into the presumption and assumption that the so-called Honorable Bar Association, for example, is speaking to us in a congruent language as to opposed to their secret society language, because it's a bar association. Only bar members are allowed to use it. And only bar members are allowed to use the Black's Law Dictionary because it's copyrighted to them. If I don't have copyright release to use the words from that dictionary, can I use it? I can't. So therefore, I am disabled as to what the words are. So you pick any word that you want, look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, which is actually a concordance rather than a dictionary. You will find a simple word like you would mean something else, like Y-O-U or E-W-E. Sounds like I'm saying you, but what I'm saying to you in their twisted world of secret words is that you're a female sheep. You understand that, and I understand that. If a person has now become cognizant in general society that something is going on and we are not getting language closure, that means there's fraud going on. And especially when you give them 3 chances, which is rescission's law, 3 strikes and you're out. You give people 3 chances before you kick them out. It happens in your football games. It happens in the boxing. It happens in everything. We give people chances, okay? And it's tradition to give people 3 chances. So when you give them 3 chances, just simply say what language you're speaking from, and they fail, now you're dealing with fraud. Because they are official people trying to extract something from you, whether that would be monies, whether that be promissory notes, or to fraudulently contract with you. Okay, so I'll give you an example of this, and I'll make it as personal as possible, and I'll make it into documents as well. So let's make it a little bit jokey. You're a single woman, I'm a single man. I have a profile on a dating website, and I put up a picture that looks like Brad Pitt. And you put up a picture of yourself in the likeness of what you are. We go on a date, and lo and behold, something like Brad Pitt hasn't turned up. Have I purposely deceived you?
I would say yes.
Okay, so if I have deceived you, then I have opened myself to fraud claims. Yeah, which is the fraudulent conveyance of language. Now, that's exactly the same when a letter comes through the letterbox. Say, for example, the government writing to you, and they drop a letter through saying that you must vote otherwise it's a criminal offense, and you read it like you would do poetry, as you would do poetry, because there's no definitions, it's all poetry. Poetry means that it's your personal opinion as to what it means.
Multiple interpretations.
Yes, because you don't wish to perjure yourself, which means tell lies on a document when you write back, you say, oh, I don't quite fully understand what language you're writing in. I speak Swahili. Can you write it to me in Swahili? So they write something that looks like Swahili, but they don't write, this is the Swahili language on the top left-hand corner of their document. If they don't do that, it just sounds like Swahili, but it could be the Black's Law Dictionary translated in Swahili to sound like the words, so they can fraudulently convey language to contract with you.
Yes, but it's rather incredible. Again, it actually implies that everything that comes through your letterbox could indeed be committing massive fraud.
So what I would say in a cheeky fashion, how many dating websites have you gone into and looked up and went onto dates only to find they don't look like, sound like, think like, have the income that they ever said on that dating website? That fraud that I am speaking about here and now exists all the way to the documents, to the governments, the corporations, the prime ministers, the presidents, the clergy, the Vatican, everything that deals with the general public. A few percent of us, a few percent control this language, a few percent control a far superior language to squash all this fictional nonsense, called the fictitious conveyance of language. What does that mean? If I did it as a dating website, falsely put false income, falsely put a false picture, falsely made false descriptions of myself, advertise it, that's false advertising. Use Brad Pitt's picture, alter it without copyright release from Brad Pitt, I've now copyrighted infringement, broken copyright infringement laws. And this level of fraud and hacking into other people's profiles, other people's languages, and other people's documents and dictionaries is taking place every day with the normal, average human being that goes about their business, innocently thinking that good men and women that belong to good secret societies, like the Bar Society, is performing honorable duties. You speak to anybody that's ever been into court. You speak to any person that is a licensed prostitute, which is called a solicitor. You will always find, so I beg your pardon, withdraw that, the outcome will very rarely ever be in their favor. It will be in the favor of the courts and the custodians of the court and the ambassadors of the court, which is called lawyers, solicitors and barristers and so on and so forth. You are instantly disabled if I don't tell you I'm speaking a language that only sounds like the language you use. But when I say you, I'm saying to the rest of the world, Y-E-W-E.
And is this part of the reason why so many people who go to court can never get justice in the court system?
Yes, because they've walked into a court system that has its own language. They advertise it. They say that you are incompetent to speak our language. They say you are incompetent to be numeral. So you have to have an accountant because we don't trust your books, even though I went to school and know how to add up. And they put you in an incompetent position. When you are in an incompetent position, you are a ward of the court because you are incompetent. And as an incompetent person, you will be treated incompetently. They're just following on with what you started off. They are saying to you, you can't read and write, you can't add up, therefore we're going to do to you what we like, because you don't know the difference between a 10-pound note and a 10-pound and a 10-euro note.
Does it make any difference if somebody goes in pro se, and they don't use an attorney, etc., to sort of establish their competence or their own livingness?
Okay. One of the things that the average person has to know, when you're going to a court, that is actually the embassy of a different country or a different corporation. It's an embassy. It's like me walking into the US embassy in London without an invitation. The Marines are going to kick me out. And if I do any damage, then I'm treated as a trespasser. So when the courts are writing to you, they're writing to you to come in voluntarily and fall into their numerous tricks and traps, all done with the presumption and assumption that the words that are in the paperwork that they sent you sound like the everyday words that they use, but it's a completely different language. That much you understand and I understand. The courts are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There is no adjudication there. There is no fiduciary services there. To get it is as tricky as passing landmines. Okay? That's why the whole world is up in arms, not weapons, up in arms, not weaponry, 2 different licenses, 2 different contracts. They're up in arms as to what the Bar Association is doing, what the judges are doing, which don't exist. We can't find any judges that really exist because they never put their name to anything. And they're using fictitious names, which is called pen names. Okay, and it's
That's
all
very
just,
interesting.
yes, quote me on it. You know, let the judges come forward and see how long they last in my presence. They can't.
Absolutely
Okay?
horrifying. So basically, you're saying there is a primary deceit that is going on in the whole world, and that
And David, full colon David, Chief Federal Postal Judge, that taught me, did exactly that, and I'm following on from the things that he done.
Yes, absolutely. You know, as I told you earlier, Mark, I've spent some time looking through David's videos, your videos, Russell J. Gold's videos, the Glosso Channel's videos, etc. And so I have a little bit of an awareness of what you are speaking about, but you've done a marvelous job just now explaining that basically we're dealing with language fraud. There is a huge semantic deceit that is going on. So most people looking at the language in which all of these, you know, lawsuits, etc., are written, the language of the summons is written, the language of the judgments is written. We all imagine that it's written in plain English. It's simply speaking to us in the language that we are familiar with on an everyday basis. And we don't even think that the language we are using on an everyday basis is in any way fraudulent or saying something other than what we think it should be saying, etc. So this is sort of a sea change, a sort of a mind shift for most people to grasp that the language in which a lot of this official stuff is written is fraudulent at base, that it's putting over a massive deceit on the populace, on the reading populace. What is the remedy to that? Would be sort of a question.
The remedy would be simply to know what the words are saying. That's called parse. These are the parts of a word, like a single word. You use the word like, say, independent. Independent, okay? They are 3 words put together. Let's keep it simple for the time being. 3 words put together, independent. Just that one single word, okay? You and I accept it in everyday word, meaning that I am independent, which means I am not dependent upon anybody else. Can we agree upon that?
Right. That is the common understanding, I believe, of the word. Yeah.
Okay. So if you have the word independent, and we agree that that's what it means, that the word in in front of dependent means non-dependent man or a woman, you can't disagree with that, can you? So if I was to put that word back in, what would that word back, those 2 prefix words mean to you? If I put the words in back into what I removed.
Non-dependent. So in means no.
In means no, and it came out of your mouth and not mine. Now let's take a single word like that starts with in. Can you give me an example of a word that starts in IN. Now there's 20 people sitting here with me. Perhaps they can shout something out.
Oh, sure. Go right ahead. You can throw it to them.
Give me a word, please.
Incorrect.
So this gentleman on my left-hand side said incorrect.
Okay.
So what does the word in mean that is in front of correct?
No, so not correct. Incorrect. Oh, that's really interesting.
So that means non-correct person. Would you agree?
Right, right.
Okay, so now think of a word, IN. Think of a word that begins with the word IN, that means the direct opposite of what it means in the words that we agreed upon, which is just the prefix.
Integrity?
Okay, integrity. What does integrity mean to you?
Somebody who does what they say, who follows through, doing the right thing, right action, all of that.
You've just contradicted yourself. You just told me IN means no, a non-person with no integrity. By just removing the prefix, you've realized by adding a poison prefix, you have corrupted a word that stands to pretending to be honorable, that you are a integral part of society. What you are actually saying is an oxymoron, because you have two words that mean that IN means no. In fact, if you look up the dictionary, you can find hundreds of words that begin with the word IN that is in the negative state, which is in the negative state, like independent, non-dependent person, that clearly says it means non-dependent person, like incomplete, incomprehensible, or mean no, no, no. And now that you tell me that I have integrity.
That's really, really interesting. So are you suggesting that this doesn't... Go ahead.
If you was to pick up a dictionary and you started looking at those words and you pointed out to the author of that dictionary, hey, you've made a mistake here. How many words starting with IN can you disqualify by rationality, by logic? Because nobody can argue with logic. 2 times 2 equals 4. What idiot's going to argue with that? Are you going to argue with me, as lovely as you are, that IN now means nothing but no?
I'm not going to argue with you about it, but I am going to ask. I mean, what you are...
I suppose what I'm saying is, I've introduced you to logic, and logic says, I've given you 2 examples of why IN means no. So if the courts are writing to you, claiming to be an integral part of society, what have they just told you? The very opposite of what I presumed and assumed means that it's an honorable position, where I've got now 200% proof. It means person with no, what you call, integrity.
Right, very interesting. But it does bring up the question. I mean, languages change over time. The ways in which we use language over time changes, word meanings. Words sort of come into invention and existence over time through being, mixed in from various other languages and so forth.
What other languages?
Other languages, like from other parts of the world, Swahili or, Tamil or Hindi or all of those colonial languages that sort of mixed in with English, which is such a colonial language in itself.
You think it's all a coincidence? The root words are all Latin in the so-called English-speaking world?
Oh, right. And there's that too, the fact, the Latin and the Greek roots of English.
So would you not say, when an official department with incredible amount of power and force writes to you that it's safe, because you don't want to perjure yourself, that you just simply ask for, can you write it to me saying whether it's in plain simple English? Can you write it to me whether it's in Black's Law or Oxford Dictionary? Can you give me some word closure as to opposed to word disclosure? Because if I disqualify you, that means you've got no qualification. Can we agree on that? If I disqualify you as a journalist, you've got no qualification to be talking to me. And yet you ask the courts for what? A disclosure? which means what? No, closure. And they give you what? No closure. You see where the tricks are lied?
Absolutely. So are you suggesting that is a way out with the court system, for instance, or that is a way in which you can sort of cut through this deceit by asking them, what language are you speaking
Correct.
to me in?
Correct. Yeah. And I
Is
control the language of the courts. I control the language of the governments. And I control anybody's language that refuses to give word closure. Closure means, in counseling and therapy, as it were, closure means to close something. If you can't close something, it's open-ended, which is poetry. Poetry is open-ended. In order for sentences as words to make sense, they have to be closed. If you want to turn it into poetry, you open it and become open-ended and becomes poetry. They're writing to you in poetry. Okay? So I've given you just two examples of what's known as passe. These are the words that break up to prefixes, root words, and suffixes. We have not spoken about suffixes and we have not spoken about root words, but we picked on one or two prefixes. Disqualify, DIS, means no, always has meant no. And now you're asking for disclosure. So we have an oxymoron. Oxymoron means they can't fit and makes me certainly moronic. Would you not agree? We are stupid people doing stupid things, talking about stupid things, contracting with people you don't want to contract with. So it's safe to say, why don't you tell us what language you're writing from, I should say. Okay, that's a start. That's a start. When I begin to passe a document, that means to show the forensic fraud in the document, systematically breaking it down word by word, I will point out the error in the ways of the document. And when I begin to syntax the document, I will show how one word is modifying the other. If I put the word in front of dependent, that will modify the word dependent. If I take it out, it will modify it again. Agreed? That's just one word, independent.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, let's pick on another word, prefix, independent, DE. Can somebody give me an example of DE meaning something negative?
Deceive.
Deceive, somebody shouted out. To deceive.
Great. Mm-hmm. Deceive, yeah.
Okay? So, any other words we can think of?
Disarm.
Disarm. That's a dis, which is a DIS, as opposed to DE. So anybody else can think up of another word. I'm just acting as if there's an audience here.
Degenerate.
Degenerate. Degenerate. If I was to say to you that you're a degenerate person and you sued me, what is it that you're asking me to do? You're asking me to remove the word DE from that document. By me removing it, you've now become a what?
A generate? A generate?
A generate person, like generous, like genuine, like generosity, like a genie, like a genius, like a genuine. Okay, that's the fraud in the language. So what does independent mean? We now have several examples. IN means no, that DE means no. So what does PEND mean? That means penned. We all know what penned is. It's the past tense of writing something. It's an old English word. Like a pendulum. Yeah, it's an old English word. That means no, pen. That's forensics. With 300, 400, 10,000% proof that these prefixes are fraudulent from the beginning. And they are sitting there working their way in by design, because these words are not coming together by some evolutionary accident. They have authors. What did Webster's dictionary author say? The greatest crime I have ever committed was the bastardization of the English language. A self-confessed liar whose dictionary is taught in schools, in law schools, in colleges, as the creator of dictionary. A self-confessed liar. Where's the oxymoron in that? It's everywhere, is it not?
That's very interesting. So you're attributing intentionality and intention to these guys who created these dictionaries back in the day.
I'm attaching incompetence, illiteracy, just look up those words, it means illiteracy, like an illness, incompetence, illiteracy, presumption and assumption. Look up the word, even what presumption, assumption means. It means no sum. Pre means no sum, like pre-animated matter, which means there's no life in it. Remove the word pre and you have animated matter. Put the word pre back in, you have non-animated matter. That's what it means. Pre, it means no, away from in Latin, okay? So if I said previously, it just simply means no verse. That's what it means, okay? Look up the word like, a single word like universe. Uni means one, like a unicycle. Verse means verse, as in chapter and verse. It means the one verse. This is how words work. But when somebody deliberately, and it is deliberate because Webster said it, I'm the bastardization of English language, self-confession. If they use that and get me to believe independent means anything other than what I think it means and what it reveals in Latin and what it reveals by forensics, what it reveals by logic, I am doing nothing but acting as a moron, walking myself into trouble, and hence the whole world cannot forge its own contracts, write its own contracts, and every single corporation, cell phone operators, to watchmakers, to milk and milk makers, to coffee makers, all dictate their terms and conditions to you. But the general public is powerless to put in their own terms and conditions. When's the last time you went to the gym and saw their 101 terms and conditions which you openly agreed to? When's the last time you asked for your terms and conditions? Okay, I accept your terms and conditions. By the way, this is my terms and conditions. Why did they ever make joinder with that? It's because people do not know how to pen their own contracts. And if you can't pen your own contracts, you need a solicitor, a prostitute. You need a judiciary. But if you are literate and you are educated enough to know the poison in the language, you are able to write your own contracts and you can make your own adjudications. That's the power of contract. You communicated with me, I communicated with you. Where was the middleman? There was no middleman. But you want to speak to a journalist that works for, I say, a reporting company. Report means no, because I got receding gum. Receding gum, remove the word recede and you are left with seed, which means exactly the same as seeding, okay? You go to them, you have to go through a middleman, which is the editor. He has to approve it. Me and you, we don't need to have any of this nonsense. You interview me, I interview you, I talk back to you, you ask me questions, no middleman, and there's an audience. No editing needed, no solicitor's contracts needed, no adjudication needed, no government approval needed.
Yes, the right way to do things. I agree with you. I hesitate now to use the word independent after what you just did with it, but that's what I've been calling myself so far. So, but you know, the thing that you're talking about, this notion of contract, then, that's a huge subject in itself. And
okay. Would you like me to elaborate on this?
Yes,
contract?
because I would like to ask you if there is a way in which people who are wronged, who have been wronged by whoever, whether it's their local government, their city council, the police department, their neighbor, whoever, if people have been wronged and they want to take somebody to court, what is court? Well, of course, this brings up this whole system, this whole question of the court system and who it belongs to, the corporations behind it, etc. Or can they in any way gain justice or reparation of some kind? And can they get these people who are doing whatever is wrong to them to stop through, this understanding of language and contract?
The answer is yes. There are many people that have used it and they are open about it and they have put it up on YouTube and they're giving their testimonies.
Okay.
Out of the thousands of people that I have taught, a few hundred of them are on the internet talking. Some of them are doing testimonials.
Brilliant.
The 20 odd people that I have around me are plenipotentiary judges themselves. Some are trainee federal judges, ready to be released on the world, as it were.
Fabulous.
Sent out through the four corners of the planet. Four corners of the planet, which is contract law. Four corners. Okay, every
The
court.
four corners rule, yes.
Four corners rule. Okay, so yes, there is a solution. That was David Wayne Miller, who points out the fraud in the document. And because you have it in paperwork, you don't need to go historical. You don't need to go anywhere apart from the paperwork that came through your letterbox. And since you are now in possession of fraud, what's your duty as a citizen to do? To report it or put your knowledge of that fraud to the police? Would you agree? To Interpol, to someone like me that can make rulings on it? You are aware that there's fraud going on. And if you don't report a crime, who's committing a crime?
But you see, then the question becomes, who do you report it to? I'm glad you brought up a few possibilities, because people reporting it to the local police don't get any justice these days. Does Interpol provide justice? Does your court provide justice?
Interpol? What does Interpol mean?
International police.
Okay, what does IN mean?
No.
Okay, so
Great.
If my girlfriend's name is Tara, what's that mean? What does Tara mean? It means earth. TER means earth. Tara is the feminine expression from it. Extraterrestrial. Terrestrial. Okay. What does it mean? It means earth.
Okay.
Interpol. POL. It means population. It means no terrestrial population. They police no terrestrial population. That's passe. That's the power of passe. Turn it and reverse the word. People. What's the next one? What's the root word? Somebody call it out.
Earth.
Earth. Next one, the prefix. No. It means no earth people. POL means poll tax, population tax. You know that, population tax. POL means population. TER means earth, terrestrial. That's what it means. Look it up in a dictionary. One of those definitions will give you the factual definition. IN means no. No terrestrial people, no terrestrial population. So Interpol would not exactly be the right people to report anything.
Well, yeah, so that's what I mean.
So the volition, however bastardized the language may be, they signed up in all good faith that they will do something. And that's what you have to hold them to. You have to hold the police constable, not the officer that's a security guard on a shopping mall, okay, doing corporate business, the constable, duty bound to perform his public safety duties. And that's a contract. They have that contract as well. So they have a contract as a constable, as a police officer, as a security guard, as a thug. Yeah, that's all contracts, all performing the same thing. You use the word constable and you've opened that contract to safeguard you from one point to another. You watch their faces when you say, "Good morning, constable." Watch their faces drop because they know what it means. Okay? If you say police officer, you've opened the contract, opened his duties as a security guard, same powers as a security guard in a shopping mall. Yeah, that's why you have these words: constables, police officers, and what's the other words? Peacekeeper. They're peacekeepers as well. Okay, you have all of these words sitting in one man. What comes out of your mouth is what you get. You use the word peacekeeper, he's going to be peaceful because he's a peace officer. Okay, the words mean everything.
So you're suggesting how you approach them in the language that you use to define who they are or define the relationship or the interaction with you, in a sense, posits the kind of role that they play.
That would be correct. And this is how you have to treat the courts. The courts are foreign to you, and you are foreign to it. What does that mean? Am I not foreign to the US Embassy because I do not hold a US passport? Am I not foreign to them? Would you agree?
Right. Does this come back to the understanding of maritime law?
Yes, I will cover maritime law, but as if I was the audience and I didn't know very much, I'd be thinking to myself, what is Mark talking about that I'm foreign to a court? They've written to me in a language I can fairly understand because I think I can read and write. And therefore, what's Mark talking about? Well, in maritime, in any definition, a courtroom has its own language and sets of rules. Okay, you understand that. If those
Right.
rules are unknown to you, have they disabled you? They have. And isn't disabling a person a crime? Yes, it is. So if they fail and they know it's failed because of the language, they can now open a contract with me. I'm a plenipotentiary judge. All I have to do is spend half an hour with them, educating them, or get them to go through the tricks and traps, which is the webinars, serious recordings and things like that, which I do. And once they go through that, they'll go, oh, that's what it's about. And now they're in a position to come to me. Okay, there are at this moment sitting with me 8 federal judges and 2 chief federal judges. All of them are also plenipotentiary judges. Okay, that's one. The point that I'm making here is that when you go into a court, it has all the paraphernalia of a ship. And a ship that is flying a foreign flag to the land flag of the country is the flag of that country. So if that courtroom is flying the Chinese flag, can I presume and assume quite correctly that it's an embassy of the Chinese government? Yes or no? Which would be
Right.
an embassy, won't it?
Yes.
So the flags tell you, the buildings tell you that it's actually a foreign building to you. It's foreign. If
But
it's
most
foreign,
people have no idea because nobody's looking at the flags. So that's part of what you're saying that people don't know anything about, right? We're already disabled because we have no idea what these flags mean.
correct. Who knows about flag language? Well, I'm a captain. I know rudimentary levels of flag language, what they call flag protocol. Okay, so as a result, if they're flying skull and bones, even the general public wouldn't go in there.
Yeah, right. I think we all understand that one.
Okay, but what other flags do they fly? They might fly them as in the form of a statue. In Britain, you will see Lady Justice. She will have scales, which is a symbol of commerce, and she will have a two-edged sword. And it will be a female, a very sexy looking female. And she will remove your head with feminine grace. And she's blindfolded, which means she is blind to correctness. She is blind to what you think is justice. She is blind to everything. The only thing that matters is zero the lines, zero the scales. Put the money in the scales until it becomes zero. Otherwise, I'm going to take your head off. You go to Queen's Bench in London. You go there and you walk around that building and you'll come out to the left-hand side. So when you walk in, you walk straight down, you turn left. This is the Supreme Court of England, as it were. You turn left, and all of a sudden you'll see a marble book character comic judge there called Judge Dredd. What would a marble book comic character about 7 foot tall, probably costing hundreds of thousands of pounds to forge, be sitting in the Supreme Court of England and Wales judicating? What would Judge Dredd, which was played by Sylvester Stallone, be sitting open display doing what it does? Because what does Judge Dredd? He judges you and shoots you dead. And isn't that the experience of the people that have gone through the courts? Until David Way Miller stepped up, and we sit above these courts. And they know it. And I win these cases. Otherwise, these people would not be sitting here.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you for spelling out what Lady Justice is all about. I've always wondered about that blindfold. But you know, a lot of people seem to think that
I have
that's
always wondered
justice.
about the waistline and the feminine grace.
Oh, yeah, that too. But Judge Dredd, my God. So you're kind of being told you're sort of entering comic book territory as you approach the court system, the court itself.
You are heading towards extreme danger. You're being judged instantly, and the penalty is that we will shoot you dead.
Unbelievable. So, of course, this brings up the question what exactly you do that brings all of these federal judges to your doorstep, and how exactly are you able to obviate that danger or head people off from it?
Okay, so one, you mentioned court. Court is a piece of paper and it comes under the four-corner rule. And a piece of paper is the court. Okay, once you have a piece of paper that's conveyed fraudulently, I can educate the claimant, the person that bought it to me, and what will happen is that they will now understand the fraud in the language and the written letter. I will be able to teach them how to write in a correct fashion, what they call correct sentence structure, passe, syntax, grammar, under Miller's flag, okay, David Wayne Miller's flag, or so to say full colon hyphen winner, full colon Miller, okay? Sorry about the listing of the words occasionally. I get a little bit excited now and then. Once that happens and I teach them how to read and write correctly, we now have a claim. We're now able to put values on those stamps, put autographs in it, not signatures, because we do not do signatures. We do autographs. What is an autograph? It's my graph of autonomy. So what it means is a graph of my autonomy. We don't use artificial seals unless we put our autonomy on it, like a thumbprint. This is my God-given seal. This is my creator's seal. It outwits any government, any king on this planet. When he sees this, he has to run, or she. That includes the queen of any land, the king of any land. They have no power over us because we know what we're doing. They just work in the world of fictitious conveyancer language. Now, the word fictitious conveyancer language, what is it that I am saying about fictitious conveyancer language? It's a diplomatic way of saying that liar, liar, your ass is on fire. You've been caught out on the fraud. Liar, liar. That's a diplomatic way of saying it. Okay, but if I call him a liar before I show the forensics on the document, then I am slandering him. But because I'm in possession of forensics evidence that it originated from this address with that logo that is trademarked and copyrighted to this particular address, and I have the CEOs, the financial director who is precariously liable, I'm now in a position to stop and correct them or put liens on them, all for a correct language performance, or get yourself sued, as it were. Okay? That's the power of it. It's all done in the postal system. The post office, which I have not spoken about this moment, is the post office provides the universal conduits for us to talk on ether lines, internet lines, airlines, sea lines, federal lines, pony expresses, historic, okay? They're all lines, which are all run by the federal government. Federal government. That is another word for the post office. The post office provides the means for which us to talk to each other. That's why when they invaded Iraq, what's the first thing that they did? They registered for everybody for what? Mail. Yes, they registered for mail.
They registered all the people in Iraq for mail?
That's correct. That's what the invasion is partly about, because they were unregistered. So the world could not contract with them. Okay, remember when the courts write to you, what did they write? What conduit do they use? The mail.
The postal
system. If they
system.
charge you with murder, what is it that they're writing through to you? It's the mail. If they're sending charges to you, how do they do it? Mail. If you are the biggest, baddest terrorist, they're sending you mail. And then when you mitigate, they send in the police. But it's the mail, which comes from the chain mail of knights. Knights protected the mail, chain mail. Okay, so We know how the mechanisms work and how they hid the mechanisms. These are the governments and the corporations and these people that parasite on us. We know what the conduits are. We learned it better than them. And I don't teach theory. I only teach first-hand knowledge and the things that I have done and the successes that I have done, because theory anybody can teach, and I'll leave it to theoreticians. We know the conduits, we know the power structures, what the bureaucracies are, and we are able to operate, sitting above all governments on this planet, all courtrooms on this planet. We sit above them because we have a far superior language that we quantify, that we can give word closure to, that outstrips all other languages.
Does this mean if
all
somebody...
known languages, I should say.
Does this suggest that people could write, for instance, a letter in this language, in this superior language, which seeks to convey fact as fact, and send it to one of these bodies, you know, in the courts or in government or whatever?
Yes.
And by that means, would one be making a superior claim, which will cause them to act as required or asked?
So if we are talking about the courts, it will cause them to shut themselves down on that particular case. So if they're taking your house away, taking your car away, whatever it is, it causes them to shut down. If I have 100 people doing the same thing, it causes them to shut the courtroom down. If it's 500 people with a particular department of a government, that department will shut itself down, because 500 people coming together can elect people. If I have 13 people on a document, that becomes a council. And that council has power over all fiction corporations using fictitious conveyance of language. That is why, for the corporations and the brainwashers, use the word number 13 as a what? As a taboo word, as a bad luck. Your hotels don't have room number 13, hypnotizing you, programming you that the word 13 is not a very bad word. In word 13 internationally, I should say globally, or earthly or terrestrially, is a very powerful number. 13 men and women coming together with a fiduciary, which is the 13, like Jesus and the 12 disciples, Jesus being the 13th, will cause a council to take place. If you have a council, you are already the dictator to all corporations and governments, because all governments and corporations are there to be a service provider, to provide service, just like your butler. I'm sure your butler will do a good job servicing you.
Very interesting, Mark. But you see, a lot of people currently today, well, most people have no idea about this language fraud. Most people do not know that there is a way to get around this. But this notion of actually being able to make a claim and thereby getting justice is kind of revolutionary. Most people hearing this would think, well, how can I do it? How can I get started? Where can I go to get to begin to understand Parsi syntax grammar, quantum grammar? You know.
Well, they can put my name in, Mark, M-A-R-K. Second name, Kishon, K-I-S-H-O-N. Third name, Christopher, C-H-R-I-S-T-O-P-H-E-R, @gmail.com. That will be a start. They can sign up to my tricks and traps programs. They can sign up to a variety of things, and that I've made accessible to people. They can look at my YouTube channels. They can look at the dozens of testimonials. They can speak to my judges. They can speak to the federal judges. They can speak to the plenipotentiary judges. They can speak to my clerks of the courts.
Brilliant. So that's, yeah, brilliant. So that's a good way of doing it as well. Can I take this in a slightly different direction currently? Because I wanted to ask you about two things. One was the CPAS, and the other was the Live Life claim or Live Life claim that you have recommended. And I think David Ben Miller also recommends that everybody get for themselves. What exactly do these mean? Why are these important? And what do they establish in the world?
Okay, so I will talk about the Live Life claim and the importance of a Live Life claim. The CPAS, I will cover if I have time, because that's a lengthy conversation and it can be a specific and general document. I am at the moment wearing my CPAS, which is on my left shoulder. Okay, you can see that quite clearly.
Right.
If I have time, I'll explain it. Okay.
Thank you.
So the live life claim. On paper, in bureaucracy, and I expect your audience to look up the word what bureaucracy means, and it will say those things which sit above governments. It sits above government. So what the hell is a government? Who's the big boy? It's the bureaucracies. Governments do not answer to bureaucracies. Bureaucracies dictate to governments as to what to do and what to say. Okay?
Well, most people think that bureaucracies are sort of, the whole system of protocols and stuff that governments use. No?
Bureaucracy means they run the show. Do a search on the internet, or everybody on internet land, YouTube land, do a search, look up the word what bureaucracy means, and it will be right in front of your face. So you don't need to presume and assume that I'm telling the truth. Qualify it for yourself and what it is. Okay? It will say that they run governments. Governments are answerable to bureaucracies. Bureaucracies are not answerable to governments. That's one. On bureaucracy, on paper, you are created and treated as a dead entity. You know that.
Yes.
Okay. And also, when the letters come through your letterbox, i.e. through these bureaucracies, they never write your name, I beg your pardon, they never write your name as you would write it, as your parents gave it to you.
Oh, right. They use the all caps, right?
Write it in any other style apart from how you write it in the style. Every way that they write a name is actually opening of a bank account. It's a account. They open these accounts in your name, which we'll go into later on. But because they've opened up these pen names for you, an author can have 50, 60 pen names, but be the same author. They created these accounts for you and made you liable for these accounts. And they created an entire bureaucratic system, what we call judiciary, to make sure you pay off those accounts. And they did it without you knowing. The most famous of them all is the all capitals name. The all capitals name, as you know, is a 100% proof capitalization, which means to remove the head, it's Roman, that you are dead on paper. You yourself are not dead, of course, but on paper you are dead. And every time you write a piece of paper and send it anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere because you're a dead person. You've contracted with a dead person's name. You speak in a language which is virtually cursive these days. You see the children talking, it's like F off and whatever does it say they say in the US, I don't know, okay? But it's
same thing.
Nature. What is a curse? It means to do evil upon things. So the language itself is coming out of the mouths of these people that watch these soap operas, and they're writing in these contracts, these rebuttals, as it were, in soap opera language. And what do soap operas, how was that named? It causes tears to run. That's how the word soap opera came about, because it was the soap manufacturers that sponsored the soaps, which were entertainment shows for housewives, as it were. Okay, sorry about that word, okay? But,
too funny.
Yeah, so when you write words in a soap opera fashion, in a cursive fashion, you get exactly that. You don't have the ability to control your language, the written form. You don't have enough grammar to be able to communicate accurately. This is by design. And I gave you examples of how the words are existing as oxymorons, making you moronic on paper. Okay, so that we understand. That's why you and I are talking. Okay. Mm-hmm. The live life claim, what it does on paper, factually puts you in to let the bureaucracies know that you are with life and you have a date of birth, okay, and you have a thumbprint and you have a DNA sample and you have a picture on the document like a passport, which is another word for a CPass, and that you have a serial number, a unique serial number that was generated by the post office, which there is no other serial number apart from that serial number on this planet. And not only that, you have all of that with two witnesses to say you are who you say you are. Because if I have witnesses to say you did this as an accusation, I now have proof. That's called a witness testimony. Okay? So, on paper, a live life claimant, what he does, he has a flag on his document, which is the grammar flag, what language this communication is taking place in. Okay? It has a thumbprint, which is unique to you. It has a autograph, not a signature, an autograph, which is one of uniqueness of what you are. It has a DNA sample on it, which might be saliva or a bit of your hair, or in my case, not from my head. Okay. It will have a DNA sample. It will have two witnesses. The paper itself will hold some gold value. In this case, it would be in the form of a red fox stamp, which has the physical value of a gold of worth of $1 imprinted into the stamp. So the paper has value in monetary terms, in gold terms. It has three witnesses. It has my DNA, which is unique to my face. It has my autograph, which is unique to my face and my DNA. And it holds value. And it has autograph, which is a graph of my autonomy. And the entire document is sent back to me, which is self-addressed, as the writers in the old days used to send the books back to themselves and never open it as proof of copyright. Remember that as a unique
Right, exactly.
So that serial number is the property of yourself using the federal bureaucracy's conduits, which is the post office.
Is it a number they simply stamp on it?
I beg your pardon?
Is it a number they just stamp on it when you mail it to yourself?
Let me explain a little bit more. When you take it to a post office and you say, I want to send that by registered post, the postal clerk will say, are you sure you want to send that by registered post? Do you not want certified mail? The certified mail is different from the registered post. The registered post goes into the safe until it is safely delivered to the recipient, which it might be you or me. Until then, it doesn't come out of the safe, and it's protected by the Army, the Air Force, and Navy. Okay, so when you send that back to you, the post office guarantees you that nobody on this planet with that name that you sent it to, with two independent identifications issued by the post office itself, i.e. driving license, passport, can ever be in that location on planet Earth with that zip code, with that serial number, with that name, with two identification to take that possession of that letter. They have certified you are who you are. And because you sent it back to yourself, it's your property. And you have not surrendered it to anybody. The way that the fictitious conveyance of languages work, tellers of lies, is to rob you of that mechanism and put themselves as the acting middleman. We bypass the middleman. The proof of that is what you and I have done. Woman coming together to talk to a man, to educate the world. We know what the bureaucracies are. We know what the bureaucracies are for becoming judges, federal judges, plenipotentiary judges, to quash documents, to perform forensics on them. We know how to bind documents. We know about document preparations. We know the entirety of how to run a government. And the people that are with me are not just plenipotentiaries. They're here on a nation building program. Each one of these members will become the father of their own nations. We know what the bureaucracies are. I use the word nation loosely because the word is not my property. It was created by somebody else, copyrighted to them. Make sense?
Absolutely. You know, I had just one question about the Live Life claim, which you send back to yourself. And because it's registered, you said, and it's being, ascertained as, verified to be true that you are the receiving party, you are this person by means of use of your driver's license. However, the driver's license is a document created by the local state government, and it puts your name in all caps, right? So is there, another
Which
secret?
bureaucracy did it come through?
It came through the Postal Service, but
Without that bureaucracy, there isn't a contract. Is all contracts negotiable instruments?
very interesting.
It's a negotiable instrument. So as it comes through the letterbox in all capitals name, it's your choice which you wish to contract with it or not. My driving license has my terms and conditions on it as well. It has my Live Life claim number on it, and I just stick it on there. I stick my terms and conditions on. The DVLA sticks their terms and conditions on. They are forced to make joinder with me and recognize me as a Live Life claimant moving from one point to another. All I'm doing is sticking my flag on it, my terms and conditions, and taking possession of that which is mine anyway, because I'm the one that qualified to drive, not the DVLA. And because I control the language, I now drive the DVLA. You understand what I'm saying? Which is the
Yes.
Department of Vehicle and Transport Licensing, whatever it is.
Yes, and this is what you mean when you say you make joinder with your driver's license and you make joinder with your passport.
So if you have not made joinder, if you have not accepted somebody's terms and conditions, and if you have not, then you have refused the contract. That's obvious. You've sent it back to them. But if you kept it, that now becomes a unilateral agreement, which means one way. What does uni mean? It means one, unicycle.
Right.
One-way contract. You can't have a one-way contract. That's why Obama says it's a unilateral agreement, which means I'm dictating to you. Why don't you make contract and tell me your terms and conditions? It's an offer, but nobody is educated enough in a mass level to be able to say, well, here's our terms and conditions, Obama. Who are you? What language do you speak? Who are you? What are you? Are you male, female? Tell us. We're not going to presume and assume. Isn't that right, Obama? Yeah? Wasn't that right, Obama?
He's probably listening.
Let him listen. It's fiction. He's a puppet. Yeah, I'm speaking to the puppet masters. So what is it that I'm saying? That I now put my terms and conditions onto that passport driving license. And I have made joinder with that, which means you and I have agreed upon it. You are the Department of Transport. I'm the user of the Department of Transport. We have made joinder. Now that document is my document.
Brilliant. And that's for those of us who are still using driver's licenses and passports. But when you move on, as you suggest you are moving on, and the people with you to becoming plenipotentiaries, father, nation builders, etc., what are the implications there? Are you suggesting setting up new systems entirely?
What systems?
New systems of interaction, of existing in the world, where one is not bound as a citizen of the nation that you are in, for instance, or that you are supposed to be in, which is, the UK, for instance.
As I said, every corporation, every government is here for the benefit of mankind. Nobody can disagree with that. What has gone wrong is that people have been purposely ill-educated, not to be able to become the beneficiaries of corporations and governments. You are not treated as beneficiaries, but rather as belligerents. You are belligerent towards your government. Our contracts are positive contracts, and they tell and dictate governments what to do and how to do it. And they perform very well. Otherwise, I cannot do what I'm doing. I am here to shut down anybody that conveyances their language fraudulently. Okay, if I did not have protection, I cannot do what I'm doing. The federal government is very good at protecting me, and I thank them for it. They're doing their duties because I have dictated my terms and conditions. I've used maritime law. I've used bureaucracies to tell the whole world I'm peaceful, but I will come after those people that do wrong and hurt people. I will do that. I will show no mercy. Okay, mercy. And I'll perform a salvage claim on them. I'll salvage them as a belligerent vessel, which we've done already.
Brilliant. I think a lot of people would be knocking on your door with like,
They
requests
do.
in that direction.
They do. A lot of people do knock on my door.
Very interesting. So, Mark, that actually opens up a whole subject, but we're kind of running out of time over here. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. And there's so much more that I could ask. Is there anything that you can think of that would be useful, you think, at this moment, within the realm and context of this conversation that we've had, that would help people further understand this entire situation and scenario and kind of guide them in, the right direction?
First of all, just understand the words that are being written down by governments do not say what they mean. That's one. Look up the words and just simply ask, can I have a language that I can understand? Because I don't fully understand your language. That's two. Third is that if people are in trouble, they're in trouble because they have been ill-educated. The best way to educate yourself is from free sources, from people that give out information on YouTube, but show you proof. If they have no proof of their claims, it's just airplay, it's just noise. Ask them proof. Everything that I do comes with proof, whether it's logical or with testimonials, or whether it's for seals or with my oaths or as a judge or as a plenipotentiary. All that is online. All you have to do is look it up. Okay? So if anybody makes any claims saying they are this or that, or they make claims against you, you owe them that, and you owe them that, and you've done this and that, just simply realize that the language that they're writing to you is only sounds like the words that you and I use every day. In their dictionaries and in their world, it means in something entirely different. When you folks out there on internet land, make it very clear when somebody asks you to sign something that you have an autograph, not a signature. Signature is just a simulation of nature. That's what passe is. It's a simulation of nature. You have a three-dimensional print which you are able to leave on a document called an autograph. When you autograph your name, punctuate it with full colons, those are the two things that stick on the end, you now become a fact. What does that mean? It just simply means without that full colons, you are nothing more than a pronoun. What's a pronoun? A pronoun is a substitute for something that's real, like hey you. Hey you is a colloquialism. Okay,
Right.
it's a pronoun. It's a substitute name for a fact, what they call a noun. Okay, so do not allow yourself to walk into autographing things that you don't understand. The document has to say what language it's written in. That's just simple courtesy. If they don't, they are engineering you into fraudulently extracting something from you. That's fraud. If you ask for a language performance from your chosen language and they fail to do that, they are committing language fraud. But it must say it's written in US dictionary. It must say it's Webster's dictionary, Oxford dictionary, plain English, simple English, quantum language, whatever it is, Esperanto even. Okay, Esperanto is an artificial language. We have an artificial language that is mathematical, gifted to us by David, Foucault David. Just like the artificial languages out there, that is Esperanto. If it doesn't say, even if it's written in Esperanto, which has its own dictionary, which UN accepts, then it just sounds like language. It just sounds like the words that you use. Governments and corporations own trillions. The only way that they can own trillions is to take something from you by your consent by sending these letters through the letterbox. You and I know a corporation cannot own trillions because we don't produce trillions of dollars or pounds of commercial activity. The population doesn't. So how they are in possession of this amount of money? That's a fraud, is it not? That's accounting fraud. So hold them accountable. under the Misprision rule. That's in the US, Misprision rule. Tell them that you are in jeopardy of fraudulent conveyance of language, that you wish to safeguard them, and that you are moving on the Misprision rule. Choose the language you want, but say it, but make no accusations. Use the document in your hand to show the fraud. Don't accuse, because that's accusation without proof. Remember, in law, he who accuses must have proof. If he doesn't, that's slander. He who has a claim must have proof of the claim. If you're going to say anything, you must have proof. If you make an accounting system, you must qualify your accountancy. Would you agree? Without it, you are just babbling away without witnesses, without proof, and just talking and walking yourself into a lawsuit, which you must not. Keep to the language, folks. Keep to the language. Look to the language. The language will tell you it's written in fraud. Once you control the language, you control the contract. When you control the contract, you control the commercial activity of yourself. The corporations themselves are unable to produce commercial activity. They have to rely on the fraudulent conveyance of language to extract that energy from you in the form of money. And they're doing it by consent, by walking and talking you into thinking that you can read and write. You as a journalist, I have disqualified the word IN from your vocabulary by logic alone. You'll never be the same. You'll never comfortably use the word independent again without knowing it means no. Would you agree?
Well, the other word that I use is investigative. So, investigative and independent, I suppose they both mean the opposite of what I intend them to mean, right?
Yes, investigate means no vestige. I have no vestige interest, which means interest means no terrestrial estate, as in EST. It's simple as that. It really is simple as that. And that's passe. Now, I sue the Inland Revenue for my creator's right to pay my taxes in the correct language and in the correct name. Why is it so difficult for them to perform in the correct language and in the correct name?
Yeah, and that's one of the big questions, right? So, wow, this has been a vastly illuminating conversation, Mark. I have to thank you immensely for going so deeply into all of these areas and
I beg your pardon. I'm sorry to interfere. I gave you probably 0.25% or less of what's out there in my mind, in my vocabulary, and in the minds and in the tongues of these people sitting here. I only gave you a fraction, okay? So that's what, it's not in-depth at all. If you was to go in-depth, it will get much more interesting and there'll be more solutions. People are not victims. You are not victims, ladies and gentlemen. There's solutions out there. There's multiple solutions, okay? One of the solutions is sitting right here in front of you. As simple as that.
How can people contact you? I guess you already talked about this a little bit earlier. You're on Facebook, you're on LinkedIn, you're on YouTube.
If you Google my name, everything will come up, I'm sure. That is a liar, cheat, a voodoo witch doctor or whatever it is. But you will find my name, which is Mark Kishon Christopher. You'll find my email, my YouTube channel, and the various other articles that people have written about me, okay? God forbid that if anybody contacts me that they understand the language fraud, then of course the game is over for 90% or more of the infrastructure of this planet that's just running around on presumption and assumption.
Would you say then that as more people become educated about this language fraud, that presumption and assumption is going to fall away, and therefore the fraudulent structure it rests on will also fall away?
So my answer is, of course, yes. But would you like to hear it resonated from the rest of them as loudly as you can possibly hear it? Go for it.
Oh, yes!
Love it. And there you have it, everybody. I mean, that's fabulous. So your closest, accomplices here, your students, know exactly what's going to happen next. That's brilliant. That's very reassuring. Thank you very much, Mark. And thanks very much to your audience back there who also helped us. Thanks. And we'll be in touch. I hope you'll come back.
You just have to invite me. I'll make myself available.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mark. Have a great night, everyone.